Do you believe, Mr. Dreher, that IMF, not do you believe, you showed us that IMF is politically motivated, like we thought when IMF gave the money to the Latin American dictatorship? And then there was a lot of questions about why they did that. Everyone thought, the journalists, we thought, the newspapers thought that they supported, by giving them the money, the dictatorship in Latin America. In 2015, is the same thing happening?
Well, the IMF is an organization that belongs to its member countries. There's weighted voting in the IMF, which means that the United States, with the largest share of about 17%, together with some 10 other countries, has a simple majority of 50%. And so these countries can decide which other countries get loans. So it's a simple 50% majority. And so basically the friends of the G7 countries, of the United States and some other important shareholders, they get more loans than other countries.
Do you believe that what you have studied and the things that you have calculated, that the decisions are being made only with economic criteria or also with political criteria?
Well, economic criteria are important, but of course political criteria are as well. So what we show is that temporary members of the United Nations Security Council, they have a higher probability of receiving an IMF program. They get larger loans, they get these loans at fewer conditions, if they are in the same conditions as other countries that are not on the United Nations Security Council. And the interpretation is that these countries are important at the world stage for the United States as a permanent member, but also for other major political players at the world stage. And therefore, they influence the IMF to give these countries additional loans and softer conditionality. So both is important. Economic, certainly. Of course, countries that are in a crisis get programs more frequently. But holding the degree of the crisis constant, it is as well important that you are a political ally of the main shareholder of the IMF, of the United States.
Have you seen how the IMF behaved toward Greece? Was Greece a different kind of situation because she's a member of the Eurozone and of the European Union?
Well, this is certainly a political decision. It was very clear prior to the last bailout that the Greek debt is unsustainable. So I don't think that any other country without that massive political support by Eurozone members, France, Germany, and as a consequence also by the United States, would have gotten similar terms. So it's very clear that the debt amount is not sustainable. And so any other country, there would have been the expectation of some default or a partial debt write-down prior to another IMF program. This is what the managing director of the IMF says in public. The debt is unsustainable and there need to be some write-down or extension of maturities or whatsoever. But of course, again, it's a decision that is taken with a simple majority of weighted voting. And the United States, together with Germany, France, and say 10 other countries, can alone decide on whether the IMF continues lending. And so one of the main points in my presentation was really this misperception in the public, where you frequently in newspapers you read the IMF could decide no longer to give money to Greece. And of course, it's not the managing director, Madame Lagarde, who could make such a decision. It is the executive committee of the IMF. And that means it is Germany, the United States, France, and some other countries who are in charge of such a decision.
So what we read even today, what Madame Lagarde said, and what the Germans and the French said, the one that the debt is sustainable, we don't write off anything, Lagarde that no, we cannot give any money. We should not pay attention to that, because if Washington, Berlin and Paris decide to give the money to Greece, the money will be given to Greece.
Well, yes and no. I mean, the money will be given. That I agree to. On the other hand, the managing director, of course, has an agenda setting power. She has a very prominent role in the public, so it is taken up by newspapers. And of course, it is clear the level of debt is unsustainable. So it is approaching 200% next year or in 2 years of GDP. It is clear that this will never be repaid in full, at least not in the schedule that it is currently expected. And politicians know that, of course. It's just a question of domestic politics in Germany in particular, that it would be very unpopular in the public if the Minister of Finance would now say, okay, we negotiated a new program, We have a Greek government that tried to threaten us, and now we give in and give Greece a default, a debt write-down, not a default. And so in the longer run, something like this will certainly happen, and Madame Lagarde might have a role in that. The IMF could even be used as a scapegoat by the German Minister of Finance then, right? They could say, we always said that we will only remain in Greece if also the IMF will be present. But now the IMF says Greek debt is unsustainable and the IMF is no longer willing to support Greece. And as a consequence, we also have to accept here to a debt write-down or to an extension of maturity, simply because we promised from the beginning without the IMF we will not be there. And of course the public does not know that the IMF couldn't make this decision without German and some other countries' consent.